Hai everyone, halo teman-teman Bangkit semua, apa kabar? Gimana puasanya, masih lancar? Ini udah mau Idul Fitri, udah mau liburan, tetap semangat. Tahu sih deadline Bangkit masih banyak banget, tapi ya mau bagaimana, kalian punya waktu sampai akhir Juni di Bangkit, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Hari ini kita akan belajar gimana sih bikin ideas into a product. Jadi kita akan kedatangan teman-teman dari SPV, SmartPodVillage, Singapore. Jadi mereka ini itu adalah AR-based solutions, yang akan menciptakan, akan bring the experience into your hand. Jadi mungkin karena kalian di sini kan tidak ada penjurusan AR, tapi kita pengen dari tim Bangkit pengen kalian tuh ngelihat gimana sih teman-teman SVP ini build their product, how they think about the UX, how they think about the tech stack. Jadi hopefully it can help you when you decided into implement your Capstone project as well. Untuk menjelaskan lebih lanjut tentang SVP, I will call Ping Ping, the CEO of SVP, into the stage. Hi, Ping Ping. How are you?
Hi, Fabio. I'm very well. How are you? Hi, everyone.
I'm great. Yeah, maybe can you share a bit about SVP, so our Bangkit students know more about what is SVP is and what SVP do?
Thank you, Fabio. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Ping Ping. I'm a Singaporean, but we are a global team. I'm currently just based in Singapore. And SPV, otherwise known as SmartPodVillage, we are basically an early stage technology company where we are basically building products as well as end user experiences that enable you to live and create a positive impact at the tap of your fingertips. And how we look towards doing that is through leveraging the technologies of augmented reality and, of course, 3D assets and all of that. And yeah, and in essence, as we progress in the session today, later on when we start sharing the slides with you, you will get to hear more from the experts in our community, as like what Fabio said, to take you on a journey on how exactly can you take an idea into a design sprint, and then building out a tech stack to materialize your tech product. So we're very excited.
Yay, I'm also excited. I think without further ado, do we want to call the first speaker? Ping Ping?
Yes, let's do that. And I think Vimu can start sharing the slides. We'll probably start.
Hi, Vimu.
Hi everyone.
Okay, I think Vimu can start. Maybe Ping Ping and I can go back to the backstage, listening and learning from Vimu as well.
Okay. Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the user experience design and what is UX and what is user experience design. So I know you guys have been learning a lot of advanced tools like machine learning, cloud computing, and Android. But at the end of the day, when you are designing an application or building an application, the application will be used by the end user, the general user, right? So because of that, if you are building something, the user experience is also important. So for the application success and the virality of the application, the user friendliness of the application is crucial. So by understanding the basics of the user experience, you will get to know, you will get a clear idea about building a user-friendly application, and also you will understand what are the required resources to build application. So I'll introduce a little bit about myself. I'm Vimukti. I'm a designer based in Singapore right now. and I'm currently working as a UX design consultant for GovTech Singapore under NCS Private Limited. Previously, I had my own startup in Sri Lanka, which was focusing on building mobile apps and e-commerce platforms. Prior to that, I was working as a web designer for one of the largest media agencies in Sri Lanka. Throughout my career, throughout my career and also throughout my startup journey, I had experienced many failed startup ideas, competitions. But here are some of the successful ones and successful moments and proud moments for me. So I became the global winner for Google Success Stories in 2014. And apart from that, I've won a couple of awards as well. Let's go straight away to UI UX. I'm pretty sure that you have heard about this term called UI and UX. UI represent user interfaces and UX represent user experiences. Let's see what are the difference between UI and UX and what's the meaning of this UI and UX. So here it's a very common example to explain the difference between UX and UI. Certainly, UI UX is not only relevant to designing mobile apps or websites. It's relevant for even designing a physical product, like it could be the ketchup bottle like this. The first ketchup bottle is designed considering how the user experiencing the product, but the other one is just a beautiful looking ketchup bottle, which is much harder to use. It's mainly because it's not designed thinking the most natural way people are using ketchup bottles, and it's made most of the time it's made out of glass, and you cannot squeeze the bottle, all these things. So when you compare all these things, overall experience is better in the first ketchup bottles because it's designed thinking the user experience. So who is the user experience designer or UX designer? He's a person who is designing user experience, and it's definitely a trending job role in the market right now. But obviously this role can be divided into many smaller roles, like you can be a visual designer, or even you can be an interaction designer, uh, and you can be a motion designer as well. And also in larger companies like Google, all these larger companies, they have multiple designers working on the same project. So because of that, they have different roles assigned. Like they might be having visual designers, separate visual designers, motion designers, UX researchers. But in a small team or a small startup or a small company, most of the time it's a single user who is managing the visual design or user research as well. So I'll explain each one of these tasks briefly so that you can get a clear understanding about each task. First one is interaction designer. Interaction designer focuses mainly on designing the experience of the product and how it is functioning. So interaction designer try to understand the user flows or a path user is taking to complete a task on a mobile app or website. So they often answers questions like what should happen if user clicks on this button, which path should they take as a user, all these things. Then next one is the visual designer. So visual designer focus more on how the product or technology look and feel. So visual designer thinks about which color to be used for the design and which font is suitable for the design, and they often create illustrations, logos. But oftentimes people think like visual design is the UX designing, but it's not the entire UX design. Visual design is part of user experience designing, but it's an important aspect as well. And again, the motion designer thinks about what it'll feel like for a user to move through the product and how to create smooth transition between screens. So they create animations and visual effects, and they answers the questions like what is an engaging animation to help the user to understand the story behind the application. Another important or the trending field is in AR and VR designing. So AR and VR designers are more focused on creating products that provide user with more immersive experience. I'll talk about AR design in the last few slides of the presentation. Then another important role is a UX designer role. So they often identify the pain points of the user and what are the ways to solve users' problem. And in terms of the question, they answer is what are the problems the users are facing, and is this particular design is easy to use, and would people be interested in new design tools or new design features like that. Then the user writer is another important role, and they think about the language within the product, like designing labels and the messaging, all these things. Again, the UX engineer is the person who translate the designs you create to actual feasible tangible product. Like they can be developers, engineers. They help UX teams to figure out if the designs are intuitive, and the designs you create is technologically feasible. The last one is conversation designer. If you get an example of Google Assistant, Siri, or simple chatbot, there's no much of a physical or tangible interface you can deal with. You just use your voice and hand gestures to control the interface. So because of that, these designers more focus on the conversation between the system and the user. Now let's talk about the user-centered design. What is user-centered design? This is a common word used in UX field. This basically puts user in front and center when designing a product. So the product should be built around the user's need and motivation. So the design should also be designed to benefit the user. So the design sometimes can be modern looking and trending, but at the end of the day, if it is not solving the problem, there are no use of that design. So I'll talk about the steps in the user-centered design. The first one is understanding how the user experience the product. If you like, when in this phase, you want to know how the user will engage with your design, and understanding requires a lot of research and observing the user, and sometimes conducting interviews with the user. Then specify phase. This is where you specify user need. Based on the research previously done, you try to figure out which problems that you're going to solve in as part of design sprint or design solution. So you try to understand all the problems and narrow down and identify what are the worthwhile problems that should be fixed and solved as a design solution. So then in the design phase, you come up with design solution. You come up with a lot of different ideas to solve the problem, and try to understand the design and the problems that they are facing, and start actually designing those ideas. In the evaluation phase, you try to evaluate your solutions against user need, whether my designs are user friendly, and my designs are solving the actual problem the users are facing. Let's now talk about the design thinking process. Design thinking process is a user-centered approach to solve problems. Even if you are not in the design field, this method can be beneficial for you, because this approach can be used to solve all this type of lot of different problems. First step is empathizing steps, where you try to understand the user need and how user think and feel. This again involves a lot of research, such as conducting surveys, interviews, and observation sessions. So you can get a clear picture of who the users are and the challenges they are facing. In the define phase, you will create a clear problem statement or description of the users. Then you try to based on the research findings, you will come up with a clear problem statement. This will drive your team to get a clear picture and clear goal for the design before you design the product. Once you land on the user problem and establish why it is important for the user to solve this problem, it's time for the ideation phase. During this ideation phase, you come up with you and your team can come up with different solution and brainstorm solution uh, around the problem that you previously defined. And the goal of this ideation phase is to come up with a lot of designs as much as possible. So then you can, in the later stages, you can narrow down your solutions into a feasible solution. Then once you have a couple of idea or single idea, then you are ready to enter the prototype phase. A prototype is an early model of a product that demonstrate its functionality. Creating prototypes helps the team and the product to be actually look. The product can also be look like the final product, but it can be simple as MVP. Finally, in the prototype, once you have the prototype in hand, then you can test your design with the users. So during this test phase, you try to get the feedback from the users and try to find the actual feedback. And before you build the product, handing off to the engineers, and before you launch it to the public market, you test it and get the feedback from the users and fine tune your product before even launching it. If you are really interested in learning more about UX design, I would really suggest you to follow this specific course and specific certification program, which is launched by Google actually. And it's a completely free program. It was recently launched. If you don't need a certification, then it's a completely free program. But there are many other UX courses and resources available on YouTube and all the other education websites. Now, I'll talk about the few different tools we use as UX designers. These are not the only tools, but there are many other tools which focuses on certain aspect of the process. But these are the tools that most of the UX designers use nowadays. The first one I'll focus on wireframing and prototyping tools. There are many tools for wireframing and prototyping. You can use either Figma, Adobe Xd, or Sketch. Figma is quite popular these days, and it's popular among the community, and a lot of resources available. It's a web-based platform, and you can access this tool from any browser. Now it's more focused on wireframing and prototyping, but it has collaboration features as well. That's another key feature. You can between the designers, you can communicate with each other, and you can share your prototype designs to other parties, other stakeholders like product managers or the actual public users who is going to use this product. Adobe Xd is also another well-established tool. It's good for creating graphics and building prototypes, and they also have collaboration features as well. And Sketch is the oldest among these three, but it is limited to only Mac OS. So because of that, it is becoming. I mean, it's there are certain limitation in the usage, but it was the first one. Because of that, it is quite heavily popular among the community, and there are many resources available if you are using Sketch. For the image creation and manipulation tools, you can use either Photoshop or Illustration, Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator is more focused on creating vector graphics, but Adobe Photoshop is more focused on creating or modifying, manipulating images like the photographs you take. The other tool set is for animation tools. Lottie is another tool that helps you to edit and ship your animations with few clicks. The file type it creates is Lottie files, and it uses less space because it's code-based files. Another well popular and industry level animation tool is After Effects. You can use After Effects for motion graphics and visual designs as well. Now, let's talk about designing products or designing experiences in AR, augmented reality experiences. Designing experience in AR is becoming more and more popular nowadays because of the new normal situation, and people are trying to find out different ways to experience the product. And I'll explain few tips and tricks we used when we designed AR experiences previously. Here are some of the guidelines or the key aspects you have to follow in designing AR designs. So the first one is you have to consider the environment and the interaction and the business goal, safety, and immersive experience. I'll explain some of these facts or the tips later in the later slides. The first one is you have to think about the environment, because physical environment gives user, you have to give the user clear understanding of the amount of space you will require, the user will require during the usage of the application. That way they can decide which environment is the perfect environment to be used. For example, if it is a private environment, it could be their home or room, then you can expect the user to use this application for a longer period of time. But in the other hand, if it is a public environment where they just trying to figure out which is the correct way, then it should the experience should be much shorter than the private environment. And I know the augmented reality is trending, so because of that, everyone is trying to integrate augmented reality experiences into their application. But I personally believe there should be a business goal attached to it, because without a business goal, there you are not benefiting, and the users are not also benefiting out of the out of the solution. Sorry. Great example is IKEA Place application. This application allows user to decide furniture even before they buy from IKEA store. You can simply download the application and see the furniture you are going to buy is suitable for your room or your home. Then you can make a purchase decision on that. And another aspect is the safety of the user. It's crucial when you are designing AR based application, because they are immersing into a AR experience, so they sometimes might ignore the physical objects around them. So as a rule of thumb, don't make user to walk backward, because that will increase the chances getting users bumping into some object or something. Then the next important thing is experience size. Here before designing the application or the experience, you have to decide which experience size you are focusing. Is it a simple game where you focus on the tabletop environment, or is it a room size environment or world size? Because depending on these places or the places that you are going to build, then you will understand what sort of tools you need, what sort of experiences you are going to build. And off-screen exploration, because when you are designing something on the AR space, you don't limit to the screen resolution. So you can design something beyond your screen resolution, but at the same time, you have to you have to guide the user that you have something beyond the user experience of the screen. Then you have to guide them. Otherwise, they sometimes miss certain content, certain important content on your application. These are some of the important aspects when you are designing. Again, you when you design a normal 2D application, you don't have to give a lot of instructions to users, because they are used to using applications like social media apps or these mobile applications. But because of that, you can limit, or you can have a simple walkthrough session on as the first few steps when user install the application. But in AR spaces, it's important for you to give user tips and tours while they are experiencing the app, because uh, there can be users who are experiencing these type of experiences for the first time, so they might not have a previous understanding how you navigate through the application and how to zoom and rotate all these objects. So because of that, it's a best practice to give some sort of guideline and tour while you are doing designing the applications. And in terms of the tool, here are some of the important tools that you can use when you are designing AR experience. Adobe Aero is a new tool, and it has quite a lot of features packed within a simple mobile application. So you can use this tool to create AR experiences. And again, a little bit of advanced tool is Reality Composer. It's another similar application, but it works only on iOS and macOS. Both are simple tools which has quite a lot of advanced features. But if you are working on a bigger commercial project, then you might have to think about the more advanced and customizable tools like AWS Sumerian, 8th Wall, Vuforia, because they offer more advanced customizations. But AR is very a new technology, and the tools are getting more and more advanced day by day. Because of that, there can be many other tools available in the market. So on a final note, I should mention people are seeking for experiences, not technologies. And if the technology it's not friendly to users, they are not going to use. So but at the end of the day, you have to take advantage of all the advanced technologies and latest technologies. But I think when you are designing something or building something, your job is to build something which is much more friendly to use. And in terms of the user experience, it should be pleasant user experience. That's about it. And thank you, everyone. Again, if you have any question, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram. And I think we have a couple of questions popped here. I think let me go through some of these questions. I have a question saying what applications are suitable for UX design for beginners. I would say for beginners, I think you can definitely start using Adobe Xd, because it's more beginner friendly. I also started using Adobe Xd as my first design tool. So then you can maybe think of Figma, but I think Figma is quite widely available these days. Even if you decide to go ahead with Figma, then you can easily catch up. Tools are not the, I think, in terms of designing user interfaces, tools are not the not the advanced thing. You can easily learn tools always, but you try to learn the principles and what are the actual reasons behind designing the designing applications, and what are the steps you should follow when you are designing. That way you can get get a clear understanding what are the expectations from the user. Then another question I have, as your design must can be skilled. Uh, yeah, I get a lot of I get this question a lot of times, because some users think they don't have design skills or drawing skills. They become a UI UX designer? Yes, definitely you can become a design UX designer and UI designer as well, because your understanding on, or your skill or ability in drawing can be helpful in the process, but it's not a must. Because if you can do a simple sketch or simple hand drawing with clear notes and everything, then you can definitely become a UI UX designer if you have the right tool set and if you have the right knowledge in terms of designing experiences. Then which another question, another interesting question: which one you should prioritize, UI or UX? Which one should we learn first? I think it's an interesting question, because most of the time when we have discussion with new UI UX designers, they think user interface or the look and feel or the colors, fonts, typography is the most important part. But it's important in the process for the users. But for that, you can use available resources, like you can use a design system. Sometimes you can hire someone to design a logo for you. But if you don't understand the user experiences, the principles of the user experiences, and the reasons that you are going to build the applications, the beautiful looking product you have spent so much time won't be used by many users. So because of that, I think give priority to the UX. Even though I consider myself as a visual designer who focuses more on the visual look and feel and appeal, uh, give priority to the user experience, so that you can get a good understanding about the users and the problems they are facing, and build upon that and design something which can be used by the actual user. Uh, uh, there's another question. Is there any YouTube channel or a medium for learning UX from the scratch? Yeah, there are many YouTube channels. I think what you can do is you try to search UX design tutorials on YouTube. You will get lot of resources, but most of the times they are not focused on the entire process. I would say it's better to follow a course first, free course like Google UX design course or any other course available, like very you can maybe follow a Skillshare course as well. Then you watch your content on the YouTube, because most of the time on the YouTube, the content available is designers sharing their problems and new trends and new tips and tools they are using. So because of that, I think it's important to get a brief understanding about the basic user flow first, then go for the user experience tools and tips later with the designer's help. There are many other designers who are helping the community by sharing their knowledge, by sharing their experiences, previous experiences, and yeah, to the community. Yeah, I think what are another question: what is the convenient way to translate the design into code? This is another popular question I'm getting. Most of the time, it's a little bit tricky question and tricky thing to do, because translating exact design into code is not 100% solved in any tool. If you're focusing on design, then you have to, if you are thinking of the development as well, the code as well, you have to think both ways and come up with a single solution. It's a little bit tricky, because sometimes when you are designing something, you might have custom options and customized methods or interactions which can not be easily translated into the code. So because of that, if you are really keen in converting your Figma design into code, you can use Figma. There's a plugin called Anima on Figma. You can use that tool, but even with these tools, there are many limitations. Some certain features you cannot be achieved on these platforms, but you can definitely try. There are other conversion tools as well, like Anima, and there are many other tools available for Adobe Xd as well, plugins available. Yeah, you can get use of that and convert your design into code. I think that's about it, Fabria. Then I think we can move forward with the presentation.
Thank you, Fimu. I think for the next presentation, we will have Arwa sharing about the how to turn the design into a tech product. Okay, let me call Arwa. Hi, Arwa.
Hey everyone. Hi Fabria.
Hi. Are you ready to sharing with our students today?
Yes, super excited.
Okay. Okay. The students, please enjoy this sessions.
Hello everyone. In this part, we are going to talk about how do you exactly turn your designs into a tangible tech product. A little bit about me. My name is Arwa Lokhandwala and I am currently the tech solution architect at SmartPodVillage. I have been a full stack developer for over 6 years now, developing scalable web applications, which handled an average daily load from 400,000 to 1 million queries for companies like Telstra based in Singapore, BookMyShow, and Reliance Jio. I was also the lead instructor at General Assembly Singapore for their full-time software engineering immersive course. I love sharing my knowledge. So in my free time, I write technical blogs, I speak at conferences, I even organize meetups as part of different groups like Google Developer Group and Mumbai Women Coders. I'm a huge advocate for women in technology. And as a part of that, I led the Women Tech Makers chapter in Singapore. Now, throughout the session, if you have any questions, and even after this session, if you have any questions, please feel free to basically drop me a message on LinkedIn, or you can also drop me a message on my Instagram channel where I post useful tech tips, which would be very helpful for you at Code with Arwa. So, what exactly are we going to cover today? So, we are going to talk about different steps involved in building a tech product from inception to creation. We will first start with the step 1, that is clarifying requirements. Then we will look into how to exactly start building a product. Post that, we are going to take a deep dive into how to decide what tech stack to use. I'll also give some useful tips which will come in handy when you're creating your own product. And we will finally top it off with an exciting demo. Clarifying requirements. What does that exactly mean? It means creating a game plan. A lot of times it happens that people go into product implementation straight away, which causes a lot of problems in the longer run. To avoid this, the first step is to list out all the possible features which you think your product will have. This includes all the wildest expectations you have from your product. Once you have listed down all the possible expectations, your next step is to basically identify the USP of your product. What does USP mean? USP means unique selling point. It is like the most dominant characteristics of your product which is going to set you apart from the crowd. Now, how do you identify a USP of your product? You have to ask two main questions. First, why are you building this product in the first place? And second, how is it going to solve a particular problem? Once you know your why and how, then the next step is to identify the single most important feature that clearly demonstrates this exact thing. And then you start building your product around that. For example, when SPV was starting out, we were very sure that our main aim was to basically make people feel connected to the important issues in the world, like sustainability, as well as help them learn and experience new things in the comfort of their home. Once we knew our why and how, we basically started creating a prototype around a feature which clearly demonstrated these things. So, always keep in mind, first, identify the vision of your product, then lay out all the possible expectations you have from your product, and then break it out into essential few. Always remember, do not limit your product scope when you are just starting out. Do not make that mistake of limiting yourself when you are just starting to create your product. List down all the possible things you can think of. Now, once we have clarified the requirements, right, the next logical step is to basically start thinking about how do you go about building it. Now, in that, the first thing you have to do is determine the medium. Medium is nothing but a way in which your customers are going to experience your product. Like, is it through a website? Is it through a mobile app? Is it through a TV? Is it through a wearable device like an Apple Watch or Samsung Watch? Why is this important? Now, every application is basically divided into two parts on a higher level, front end and back end, right? A lot of times, front end and back end are tightly coupled. Because of this, suppose if you didn't think about all the possible mediums your application or your product is going to have, your backend will not be scalable with the changing data requirements. In order to adapt to that, if you think about all the possible mediums and they are different data requirements, you can design your APIs in such a way which basically fulfills all these different data requirements. If you didn't think about your mediums, right? If you just started out with, okay, I just want to create a website, and then you started creating your entire database schema, you started creating your APIs, and you exported the data and stuff like that. Now, if in future you want to add a mobile app and the mobile app has a different data requirements, what will you do? You will basically create a separate endpoint, and then you will add the data requirements for that mobile app, whatever is required. And it increases the complexity. You have to maintain things more. And in the longer run, it is not at all sustainable. So figuring out your medium is the first and the most important thing which you need to do. But I'm not saying that you always have to do that. A lot of times, it is very natural that you might not know what your mediums are going to be. You might have a rough idea that, okay, you're going to start off with website and then maybe move into native app. In that case, what should you do? In that case, you should design a medium agnostic application. Now, what does that mean? As I told you, generally in applications, the front end and the back end is tightly coupled. But in a medium agnostic application, the front end is not tightly coupled with back end. In this case, the client can be anything. It can be a website, the consumer. It can be a website. It can be a native application. It can be a TV or wearable device or any other medium. And the backend, instead of actually defining the structure of the data, it just describes the data in general. And the client is responsible for basically asking for whatever data they want. One of the popular way to implement a medium agnostic application is using GraphQL. And GraphQL is a big buzz term. So you always might be hearing comparison of GraphQL with REST API. So if you are trying to create a medium agnostic application, try to work with GraphQL instead of REST API. Now, what is GraphQL exactly? GraphQL is a query language for your APIs. So in case of GraphQL, your server, right, it only describes the data. And the client is responsible for requesting whatever data they want in whichever format they want. Let's see an example. Over here, on the right side, you see the server-side implementation of GraphQL. And on the left side, you see how the client is going to consume it. On the right side, the server basically describes or creates a schema. So schema is nothing but like a graph of all the data models. The reason why it is called GraphQL is because the server actually describes the data in the form of graphs. And all the nodes generally in graphs are all your data entities. Like if suppose in this case, this is a Star Wars example. So you have a character, you have a planet from where that character is from, what species it belong to, and then you can directly export these things. And the client can actually declaratively consume these particular data models. Now, over here, if you see, right, on the server-side implementation, you have like different types. You have type character, you have type blight, and you have type species. And each of these types actually have individual fields, which is nothing but a key value pair. So you have name, friends, home world, species. For character, for planet, you have name and climate. Now, if you look at the home world, right, home world actually has a different custom data type, which is planet. And over here, you see how we have defined planet. We have created like a name and climate field under the planet type. Now, generally, if you're trying to use a REST API, what will you do is you will actually create like an API endpoint, maybe the local host or something. Let's start. If you are just hosted it on localhost, then /posts. So post will actually give you a list of all the posts which is there for a particular, suppose a blog application. Now, in case of GraphQL, right, here the client is actually describing what structure of data they want. So suppose my website basically needs the friends. So it on the hero, there is a character type, right? And character in turn has a lot of fields. So the client can choose which fields they want. Do they want name? Do they want friends? My website might only need name and home world. And my mobile app might need friends or species. So they can declaratively ask for that. So they can specify, okay, I just need friends. So the server is not going to send them name or home world or species, all these data. It is just going to send the client whatever they have requested. This is not the case if you define a REST API. REST API, the structure is always controlled by the backend. It is never controlled by the front end. That is why REST APIs become very difficult to scale in the longer run. Now, what are the advantages of GraphQL? First, and the major advantages, generally, if you are trying to integrate a REST API, you have to make multiple API calls. As I told you, like the backend actually controls the structure of your data, right? So if suppose I have created a blogging application and on the first page, I want to request all the blogs, then I want to request all the authors. So there is no one API which actually gives me that. I have to first make a GET request to /post, then I have to make a GET request to /authors, then /reviews, and then combine all that data on the front end, and then basically display it to the user. So the front end handles the majority chunk, the logic of your application. However, in GraphQL, you only have to call one endpoint, that is /GraphQL. So it automatically reduces network bandwidth consumption. The second problem generally, which is associated with REST APIs, is overfetching and underfetching. What does that mean? So as I mentioned, that backend actually controls the structure of your data, right? So if suppose in this case, the backend, if suppose it's a REST API implementation, right? So backend might send this character and then it might send all of these data. And the client has to choose like, okay, if they want name, then they can just, display the name. But when they are making a network request, right, the network transits actually all the payload, all the fields, even if they are not used by the client, which is not at all logical because it will make your web application very, very slow in the longer run. However, in GraphQL, you don't have any such problem. Each client gets exactly what they ask for, no more, no less. The third thing is you don't have to maintain different versions. So because I told you, right, the backend in case of GraphQL doesn't control the structure, right? So if suppose you want to update your functionality, you want to add new things, you can just create a new type and add fields to it. The existing app, which is consuming different types, are not going to be affected. However, if you use it with REST APIs, you have to maintain the versions. Okay, you have to maintain v1/this is this, v2/this is this. And you have to always make sure that it is backward compatible. So there are a lot of problems associated with it, which GraphQL solves. Okay, now comes the main question. How do I decide what tech stack should I use? there are plethora of different options and plethora of different stack available. You have Mern, you have Mean, you have Jamstack. So it can get overwhelming, and that is very natural. Then how do you choose a particular tech stack, or how do you choose a particular technology? Ask this question: what is my current team skill set? Figure out what skill your currently team has. Example. So if suppose we were to design a quick prototype, or we wanted to create a quick prototype, which is a website, right? And most of my team members are skilled in React. So I wouldn't worry that Angular or Vue is latest. I would just go ahead with React and, deliver a product. Remember, the reason you're using a technology is to help you create something. Do not revolve your product around a particular technology. Technology is there to help you. It's not the other way around. Now, in case of large scale application, or even when you're just starting out, right? Each app or each product actually is made up of a lot of parts. And do you have to then decide the tech stack for each of these parts? Because obviously it can get overwhelming, right? You have something for front end, you have something for back end, you have something for another part of your system. Then how do you commit to all these tech stacks? Do you need to decide it right away? Actually, the answer to that is no. You don't have to decide the tech stack for your entire application right away. It's a gradual process. So generally, most of the apps are made up of two systems. So you have flexible system and inflexible system. Now, a flexible system is the one where you can easily change your technology or framework in the future. And an inflexible system is that system where replacing the technology is very, very costly, and you cannot do that. It is not advisable. For example, a very good example of inflexible system is choosing a cloud platform. So if suppose you're choosing a cloud platform from like AWS or GCP, how do you why is this inflexible? So consider you went ahead with one of the cloud platform, and then in the middle you decided, okay, you want to it's not working out and you want to switch it. Your backend system is already live. The risk associated with changing that system is very, very high. So changing an inflexible system is very costly in terms of manpower and money. You need more resources to learn basically the new cloud platform you're going to use. Plus, it is time consuming. You have to switch entire thing from one application to another platform. Third, it is risky because your system is already live, right? The implication of an error or the consequences are very, very high. So it is very risky. So whenever you are choosing an inflexible system, right, always think about the long-term implication of that technology. This all correlates to the first point which we discussed. When you are just starting out, listing out all the possible expectations and features you want from your product, that will help you decide which particular platform is suitable for you or which particular technology is suitable for you. Now, the most appealing option comes, okay, inflexible system, I don't want that because it's a long-term commitment. How do I make my actual application or my system flexible? The most popular way to do that is a microservice architecture. So what does a microservice architecture do? Microservice architecture basically splits your entire application into smaller, independent, easily scalable, and easily maintainable parts called as services. Okay? And then what these services do is they communicate with each other and they communicate with the client. They communicate with different protocols like GraphQL, REST API, RPC, etc. Let's look at in detail how do you implement such architecture. One of the most popular way to implement a microservice architecture is using an API gateway pattern. Now, what does that mean? API gateway is like an entity which is implemented on the server side. So what happens? It acts like a reverse proxy. Reverse proxy means all the requests coming from the client first go through API gateway, and then API gateway is responsible for gathering the data from all these different services like orders, invoice, services, support, etc. It aggregates the results from all these services and then basically sends that result back to the client. Now, what is the advantage of this? Why would you even care about it? The major advantage for this is if you are going ahead with a microservice architecture, right? I read in one of the Netflix blogs, they have more than 5,000 plus services, microservices, the mini services. Now, if suppose as a client, right, if your website actually wants to gather some data, which requires, without that API gateway pattern, it requires you to call like 10 API calls for each of these services, and then aggregating the result and then displaying it on the web application. This is very costly, right? Because you have to make more network calls, which means more network bandwidth consumption. Plus, it is not performant. It will increase your page load time. There are a lot of problems associated with it. So API gateway pattern helps you solve that. In that, you only have to expose one API, and then the client just calls one API, and then API gateway internally calls all these different microservices. Now, because your internal APIs are not exposed to the client, right, it is more secure. So nobody can hack your APIs. Nobody can hack into your system. The third advantage is you can, because API gateway exposes like a front API, you do not have to, you can easily change your microservices internally, because the client is not directly or tightly coupled with your backend implementation. Everything is through API gateway. Now, I told you API gateway acts as a mediator, right? It takes the request from the client, it goes to the microservices, gather results, and then, returns it back to the client. But that is only the tip of the things which API gateway can do. API gateway, because it's a common entity, right? You can do a lot more operations, like you can put authentication over there. So you don't have to authenticate your users for each of these services. That you can do. You can also do load balancing. Load balancing means distributing properly the request load across different servers. The third thing you can do is caching of response. If suppose a client is making a request which was already served before, then you can cache all that data on API gateway, and then API gateway can return directly to it. This reduces the load on your server. Another point I want to highlight is microservices, right? You actually splitting your application into different parts. But how do you decide which part you should split into? So a common pattern to actually determine what services your product or your application has is to look at the nouns and verbs of your application. Nouns means orders, invoice, services, support. These are all nouns. And verbs means shipping. So shipping is a verb, right? So a combination of nouns and verbs can be used to basically create different microservices. Now, if you are using a cloud native application, right? If you're designing a cloud native application, your entire application is hosted on a cloud platform. In that case, you do not have to design these API gateways from scratch. Generally, if you want to do that, you can use Nginx Plus. But if you're using a cloud platform, they actually provide API gateway as a service. So if you're using GCP, right, GCP has a service called as API gateway. And on AWS, you have something which is called as AWS API gateway. You can leverage that and actually design a microservice architecture using that, which makes it a lot easier, right? Because you don't have to implement everything from scratch. Now, I covered the microservices architecture. It was making your backend system flexible. But how can we leave front-end, right? How do you make your front-end system flexible? Previously, this was not possible. But there is actually now a way to implement microservice architecture on front-end, which is called as micro front-end architecture. And this is becoming very, very popular nowadays, because if you go into huge companies like enterprise level applications, they have so many different parts. So actually using micro front-end helps them in the longer run. So what does micro front-end exactly mean? In microservices, we saw, right, our entire application was split into different services like orders, invoice, services, and support. The same thing applies in the micro front-end, except in this case, instead of your backend, your front-end is split. So your single SPA is actually split into multiple SPAs, single page applications. So maybe your orders single page application is created in Angular. Your payments single page application is actually created in Vue. Then you can create the services one in React. And what happens is each of these SPAs, right, they basically create an individual bundles, and these bundles are then called in your main application. Now, how does that work? So because you have different SPAs now, right? And in your main app, based on the route, you basically call different bundles. So if suppose I go to www.arvalokhandwala.com/payments, so it will call the payments module. It will call the payments bundle and it will load the entire UI. Now, if I go and call /orders, and it will call the orders API. That is one way to do that. And the route-based approach is the most, it's like one of the best practices. So try to use a route-based splitting when you're trying to use micro frontend. Another way is using a targeted DOM element. So if suppose you have your application, right, your entire application, and this part is, displaying orders information, this part is displaying maybe invoice information, and you need like a snippet of it on that single page. So you can basically call that SPA into like a DOM element, into a div, and then, display the entire UI. So this is how your SPA works. There are a lot of advantages to this, right? First and the foremost advantage is your entire app is now smaller in size. Instead of calling a bundle of maybe 15 KB, you're now calling a bundle only of 3 KB in your first page time load. So the first time your page is loaded, it would be very, very fast. The second advantage is, for example, if suppose there is a huge bug in your order system, right? Now, if suppose you had like a monolithic architecture, chances are your entire application will fail if it goes into orders, and then your entire app will crash. However, because we are using a micro front-end architecture, you can easily separate that. It will not affect the remaining part of your application. The third advantage is the flexibility, right? I, as my team, right, suppose for payments maybe is the most integral part of my application, and I want to use the most latest technology for it. I don't have to worry if other parts of my system are moving towards that technology or not. That is the problem which generally happens, right? So if you create a complex application, maybe in React, now you want to maybe bump the version of React. Now that version is basically code breaking. Now, this has happened with me when I was working in one of my previous companies. So we wanted to change the version, but we couldn't do it because our entire system was so tightly coupled and there was something breaking in some other part of our application. But because if you use micro frontend, we started moving into micro frontend and we saw a huge advantage. So we didn't worry. We easily were able to switch or bump the version of React, and then everything went smoothly. So there are a lot of advantages to micro frontend. And you do not have to implement this entire thing from scratch. There is an amazing library called Single SPA, which actually does most of the heavy lifting for you. All you have to do is just define that, okay, where your bundle is, when you want to mount it, and when you want to unmount it. And it will call that bundle at that specific point. So do check out this library. It is super awesome. Now, a few things to keep in mind while you are choosing a particular architecture, right? Now, if you're just starting out, right, if you are still in your prototype phase, or if you are still in your MVP phase, that is minimum viable product phase, do not choose microservices architecture. Go ahead with monolithic architecture. The reason for that is monolithic architecture is very easy to build, test, and deploy. You can easily make the changes, deploy it quickly, and then, quickly test everything. Microservice architecture has a lot of advantages, but because you're just starting out, you might not see its benefit. You might see a lot of drawbacks. Now, once you are done with your prototype phase and you're absolutely sure what exact features you're going to build and everything, then start migrating towards a microservice architecture. Great. Now, the next question is, how do you choose between different cloud computing technologies? Now, this is a very important topic because a lot of applications nowadays, they are cloud native. So it is very necessary to be mindful of which cloud platform you choose, because as I mentioned, cloud platform is something which comes into inflexible system. Changing it in the future, once you have already deployed your application, once your application is live, is very, very costly. So how do you choose between a different cloud computing platform? So there are a couple of things which you should definitely look for before committing to any cloud platform. The first one is availability of the services you want. What does that mean? So all the different cloud platforms, they give you a lot of services. Like you have a compute service, you have a big data service, you have app monitoring service, then you have storage services or mobile backend, etc. Now, as I told you, right, in the first step, when we just started out our session, we saw about clarifying requirements and how do you list all the possible expectations. Look at that. Look at what are the possible features which are in your pipeline in the next 5-year plan or in the next 10-year plan, and look at the services which that cloud platform is offering. Will it be enough? Okay, do they support all the services which you're going to require in the future? For example, the reason we went ahead with AWS was because as we mentioned, right, we want to create an AR platform or an AR experience, and one of the services which AWS offers is Sumerian, which makes us integrating all the different services very easy. So this was a major chunk, right? This was the USP of our application, creating an AR experience and using it to basically create a positive impact. So that is why, because that was a non-negotiable service for us, we went ahead with AWS. Now, this is just one part. So availability of services you want, that is the first thing you should check if that thing is available. So if suppose you want to deploy a ML model, which is very high, it requires a very high computing power, then check at your, like, if suppose you're trying to choose a platform, check if it supports that or not. What is the maximum amount of load it handles, how much time it takes, etc., etc. Once you have checked, okay, whether or not your service is available, the next step is to actually see the cost. This is very, very important because you're going to pay for everything, right? Because it's a cloud native architecture. So see the cost associated with all of these different services. Also check that whenever you're using a service, right, what happens when your application scales to very high request load? How does the cost grow? Does it grow exponentially? Then it is not sustainable. The second thing you need to check is there a pay-per-go option? So as you use the service, you pay for them. And then also look for, like, if you can get some free credits, etc., for that particular platform, which would be very helpful. Once you have decided figured out the cost, then the next step is to actually see the community revolving around that platform. See what are the tutorials and resources available for that platform, because you have to basically skill your entire team for this, to use this particular platform. So there has to be good resources available for that. Otherwise, you won't be able to leverage that platform to its full extent. So look at that, and even look at conferences. So a lot of major cloud platforms, they have their own conferences. So, you learn a lot. You see other people using it, and then, if suppose you're facing some problem, you can actually see multiple people who have solved that problem. So it makes your entire development process very, very easy and exciting. The fourth thing you need to check is the security. So how is the security handled in terms of, firewalls, vulnerability assessments, your event triggers, the security event triggers? Also check that do they have like a specific security tools in place? In case of GCP has its own cloud security command center, and you can use 40C to basically change your default security config. Also, like AWS, it has firewalls and IAM roles, and you can define policies, etc. So look at that. That is also very, very important, because the entire security would be inherently relied on the cloud platform, which is where you are actually going to deploy your application. The fifth thing which you need to check is uptime for services. Now, what does that mean? Uptime, or also called as availability, is a percentage of the time where the system will be functional out of the total operating time. So if suppose your system is operating for maybe, example, 1 hour, right? So out of that 1 hour, for how much amount of time do they guarantee that their system would be functional? Is it like 55 minutes, or is it like 59.99 some minutes? So if you're choosing any of the major cloud platforms, right, GCP, AWS, or Azure, they offer like 99.999% availability time. So you do not have to worry about that. But if you're choosing a less prominent option, then you might have to look into that as well. The last and the final one is the support. What is the technical support which is offered by that cloud platform? Now, this automatically correlates to the third point, which I mentioned, right? Tutorials and resources. If suppose the community around that platform is very good, you will not have a lot of problem with the support. You can easily find the solution to a lot of problems which you're already facing. And, it makes the entire development process easier. Otherwise, if that's not the case, check at what is their general service level agreement. So SLA means if suppose you raise a bug, right? If you raise a ticket, how much time are they going to solve that? So if it is a low priority, they might take a week. So if it is a high priority, then they will take maybe 48 hours and stuff like that. So look at their SLAs as well when you are choosing a cloud platform. If you look at all of these factors, then definitely the choice will you make is going to very much beneficial for you, and it will not have a lot of implications. At the end, always remember while choosing a cloud platform, think about your long-term vision. And second thing is think about the ease of use. How easily can you adapt to this particular platform? Are the resources and tutorials in place? How is it? How do you make your team skilled in that particular platform? So look at everything and then try to commit to a particular technology or particular platform. Now, a few pointers, a few tips when you're working with cloud computing or when you're working with cloud native architecture. First thing is, don't develop everything from scratch. So a lot of, at least all the major platforms, they provide you some tools which makes the integration with all these different services like computing power and then storage, etc., very, very easier. For example, in case of Google Cloud Platform, right, use Firebase. Firebase makes development of the entire backend so much easier. The same thing applies to AWS, right? If you're trying to integrate an AWS service, try to use Amplify. Amplify makes integration with the services very, very easy. So, leverage all the tools which are provided by that particular platform. Remember, at the end, it's important to have a working product rather than a perfect product. You can never have a perfect product. It's an iterative process. You always learn and you improve, and you learn and you improve. So always keep learning and keep improving. Now we are going to look into the demo about the Treellion initiative. I'm super excited. So I'm just going to, okay, so, the first thing which we are going to do is, if you're seeing this QR code, if your first thing is either scan the QR code, or if you cannot scan the QR code, then you just go to the link which is mentioned over here, that is bit.ly/Treellion. So I'm going to just scan my QR code first. So let me just do that. Second. Awesome. Now, once you're scanning the QR code, it will basically open the website. So make sure if you're using an iOS device, then open the website in Safari. And if you're using Android, try to open it in Chrome. Okay. As soon as you open the website, and it scans it, it will basically give you this option, it will ask you permissions. Now, why this is necessary? Because we are actually using an AR experience, it needs access to your motion sensors provided by the phone as well as camera. So make sure you click continue and allow the permissions which it is asking for. So click allow and allow, and awesome. So you can see my living room, and you can also see a lot of different HTML elements on the page. So on the left side, there is a bush currently, which is highlighted in the blue, and then there is a tree. The first thing you need to do is select one of these options. So either select a bush or a tree. On the right side, you see there are two things shown. So you see coins, you have 100 coins, and then you have 0 trees planted. So every time you plant a virtual tree, 10 points will be deducted, and then your tree count will increase. So because you have 100 points, you can plant at most 10 trees. And on the bottom right corner, you see the feedback icon. So over here, this is the feedback icon. So make sure that after the AR experience, you basically give the feedback. The best feedback will also be considered for internships. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a tree, I'm going to select the bush, and I'm going to basically plant a virtual bush in my house. And my bush is planted. I'm going to plant one more, maybe one more. Now I'm going to plant tree. So I'm going to plant a tree over here, and then I'm going to plant a tree over here. I'm going to plant a tree over here, and then here. Because I can plant 10 trees, so I'm going to plant 10 trees. So I'm going to plant one tree over here, and then maybe one tree over here, and then we are done. So it shows you that there are no more coins available. And if you want to, plant more trees, then just click on the refresh button, and then, you can start with the experience again. And you can see my living room is full of trees. After you have experienced this AR tree planting experience, click on the feedback. So this icon, just tap on it, and it will take you to the feedback form. Make sure you give us feedback. All your feedback will be taken into consideration, and it will be implemented. What else do I need to show you? Now I want you guys to actually try it. So I'm going to switch back into the QR code screen. I'm going to close this thing now. And let me just do that. So this is the thing. And if you're doing that, right, so this is an interesting thing which you can do as well. So you can click a photo of, near your virtually planted tree, and then you can tag us on Instagram at Treellion Initiative and with the hashtag Treellion AR and Treellion SPV. I'm just going to go back to the QR code so you guys can also experience it. So try to do that. Let me know if you have any questions. Greenery in the comfort of your home. So our actual aim is that every time you virtually plant a tree, we actually want to plant a physical tree. And our aim is around 1 million trees. So I'm super excited, and I hope you guys will also help us achieve that goal. Together, we'll create a greener future. Make sure you do tag us on Instagram at Treellion_initiative with the hashtag Treellion AR and hashtag Treellion SPV. This is my pick when I planted the virtual tree for the first time. Okay, so I'm done with my content. Let's go through some of the questions which are raised. Okay, the first question is how to implement an API gateway. So as I mentioned that if you're using a cloud platform, most of the cloud platform gives API gateway as a service, so you don't have to implement it from scratch. You need to just specify what endpoint you want to expose, and then if you want to add caching functionality, it gives you options for that. But if in case you're not using a cloud platform, then you can actually use or implement API gateway using Nginx. So look at that. Nginx, Nginx. Second question is, as a full stack developer, do you suppose to manage the microservices? How does a DevOps role fit into this program? Okay, now, so it completely depends. Okay, because I'm a full stack developer, it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to know how the infrastructure works and everything. My passion is there, that's why I'm learning it. But the term DevOps actually means the person who basically maintains this entire infrastructure. They make sure that the services scale. They also assign, the DevOps team actually assigns different security roles and everything. So all the security consideration, availability, scaling, automatic scaling, all these things are done by the DevOps team. The backend engineers actually implement the services. So if suppose you want to integrate maybe an authentication API, right? Authentication, then the backend developer actually does the implementation, and the front end then actually consumes that API. That is how it works. Is it better to create a server like PHP for backend and use MySQL, or use real-time databases like Firebase to store our data? It depends on, so if suppose, if you give me, it also, it depends on two things. Okay. The first thing it depends on is the use case. And second, the scale. If it is your personal project, definitely go ahead with, creating a PHP backend and using MySQL. But if you're actually creating like a live product which will be used by a lot of users, I would suggest you use a Firebase store. Because it, first of all, availability. You don't have to like, if you deploy your own server, maybe on your own laptop, you have to make sure that your server is always on. You have to keep that process running. So there are a lot of issues with that. So if you're trying to create an application which is going to be used by someone else apart from you, use a database like Firebase and Firestore. Firebase to basically store your data. How to estimate a suitable cost if we are new to this field? Okay, a lot of the cloud platforms, they give you pricing calculator. So that's like a calculator. So you can add the services, and then you can see, okay, if I add the service and then, these are my requirements, and it will give you the approximate price which you have to pay for like per month and yearly also. So yeah, you can do that. You can leverage the pricing calculator tool. What platform you use to build SPV? It's so cool. So there are a lot of different technologies. So our inherent architecture is on AWS, and then the AR scene which you see over here, it's a combination of Sumerian plus A2L along with JavaScript code, HTML, and everything. So the elements which you see, right, the tree, tab tree, and everything, that is written in HTML entity, which is a part of Sumerian. So this is how the entire thing works. And our front-end app, the actual app is in React, and the backend is in Node. I think so we are done with the questions as well.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Arwa.
Yeah.
I think for the last session, we will have Ping Ping to speak something to our students. I'll call Ping Ping to the stage again. Hi again, Ping Ping.
Hi, Fabria. So how did you find the entire sharing, Fabria?
I think it's really useful. I learned about how, if I want to design a product, like what is the step from Vimeo. And then if I already created the design, I already know like who is my target audience and stuff. I know like how to implement that from Arwa's presentation. So I think it's really comprehensive.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, that is exactly what we hope to be able to share with all the students from the Google Bangkit Academy today, which is the entire development thought process of how we can take an idea, enter into a design sprint, and then figure out how to turn our designs into a tangible tech product. And so as like what Ara and Vimeo has shared earlier, our products and end user experiences that we are looking to roll out into the market, starting with our very exciting Treellion initiative, is to create a positive impact, whereby at the tap of your own fingertips, you can have a positive impact where you can do good and you can feel good. And like what Arwa shared, we hope to be able to have a movement where eventually we can plant 1 million virtual trees that will result in the global planting of 1 million physical trees as well, because we're all living in a hybrid world, digital, virtual, as well as physical. And so that's what we look to do. And thank you so much for having us today. We hope we have shared useful and helpful information, tips, and hacks with everyone. And you have the details of the two experts from our community, Arwa and Vimu earlier. My details are here. And follow us on Treellion Initiative. Tag us Treellion AR, Treellion SPV, hashtags, and remember to share with us your feedback. The best feedback will stand to get or win an internship with us.
Ooh, that's really awesome. I think your team is a global team, right?
Yes. So Arwa is actually presenting from New York. Are we able to all have our faces back on the screen, Fabria?
Yes, sure. Welcome again.
Yay! But you are not on the screen.
Wait, let me check with my camera. Hello again.
Awesome. So yes, we are a global team. Today we have dial-ins from New York City, where Arwa is based. Vimu and myself are in Singapore. And then you yourself, Fabria, you are in Jakarta, Indo.
Yeah.
So this is a truly global presentation. And we have other experts who are also dialing in from Pakistan, Indonesia. And yeah, so very excited. Exciting times lie ahead for all of us.
Thank you so much, Vimu and Arwa, for sharing all the really useful content for our students. Hopefully, our students can get benefit from all the explanations that both of you give to us today. Thank you so much. Also, Ping Ping, that already mentioned this opportunity to me, so I can bring the whole SPV experience to the students and learn from the best people from your team.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's conclude our sessions today. Thank you so much for Bangkit students who already tuned in from the start until now. Hopefully, you learned so much today, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day today. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.